Welcome back to ARC Tutorials. This is Axios complete tutorial series. In this particular series, we will learn what is Axios, what are some of the features provided by Axios, and what are the different variations of using it in a vanilla HTML file. We'll learn how to use it in a Node.js, Express.js, and I'll also show you how the same thing applies in React and much more. After this tutorial series, you will be able to completely learn and master Axios and start using it in your projects on a daily basis. With that being said, let's get started. This is the part 1 of the series. This is the playlist index, what we'll be covering in 3 parts. In the first part, we'll be talking about the installation, features, introduction, methods, and some basic GET request. In the next episode, that would be more of coding heavy, where we will do get, post, put, delete, etc. In the final one, we'll learn how to do concurrent request. We'll see how to set some of the header options, and also we will see some of the error handling of how to handle it properly. So those are the 3-part series, and I hope you will enjoy this series as much as I am enjoying bringing it to you. Alright, so let's start with basic introduction first. So Axios is a simple promise-based HTTP client for the browser and Node.js. Axios provides a simple to use library in a small package which has a very extensible interface. Now, there are a couple of important things here that you should know. For one, in most of the React applications or Express.js or Node applications, this is what is used heavily. Okay, that's what number one. Axios is used heavily. Number two, it's a promise based. That means you can do a lot of stuff with promises like how to return, when to return, what to do with the data that's returned, etc. And HTTP client, right, which means it will be used for making HTTP request and processing the HTTP responses. So that's all you should know about Axios, because you're going to use it really heavy, especially on React and Node.js applications. Let's talk a quick overview about the features that are provided by Axios. Axios provides helps us in making the XML HTTP request calls from the browser. We can make HTTP requests from Node.js, right? Like at the backend, which is implemented in JS, like Express.js or something. It supports Promise API. That means all the HTTP calls are promise based. We have provisions to intercept the requests and the responses and transform them. We can also cancel requests at any time, and we can transform the JSON data, and it protects from any XSR access or protecting or any attacks. Alright, what are some of the major use cases that you will use Axios in? Some of the common use cases are you will be making HTTP requests in Node.js, you will be making HTTP requests in Express.js, you'll be making HTTP requests in React apps, and also in plain vanilla index.html also. Alright, so what are the different ways of using, right? So there are 3 flavors or 4 flavors that we can use in different ways. The first and the foremost simplest way, let's say you're not using any advanced framework like React or Node.js, Express, etc. You're just building a simple HTML page where you want to make a call, right? And HTTP calls. For that you can use Axios as well. So I'm going to show you that also first, then we'll go towards the Node and Express.js. Alright, so the fastest way to use is Axios CDN. So you can search for Axios CDN and you'll find many of them. You can use JS Deliver, you can use any particular CDN that provides you with any link. Okay, so here you see you have the link, copy that script link, and now we are learning about how to use it in a simple way. So let's get started. I'm going to first create a folder and I'm going to name it learning Axios, right? And then I'm going to open. So this is a simple HTML file. So inside this I'll create a simple, say, index.html, head tag, body. Okay, and what we're gonna do is throw in a button and say on click get data is a method we'll implement. Alright, and what you'll do is in the head section include that script that we copied, which is nothing but the CDN link to the axios.min.js. and here on button we are just calling a method. Alright, so here you have the script, and here you can just start using Axios. Okay, so let's implement that method and say get data, and we can implement our Axios implementation here. Alright, so what is the simplest way to get started? Like I said, you just have to make a simple HTTP call and you can get your things done. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to simply type Axios dot get. Okay, so Axios, the library, it's the method object, and then the method you'll call is dot get. Okay, now when you say dot get, you need a URL. So the best way is JSON placeholder API. You can try that. It's a free fake RESTful API. So you can copy this URL and play with all the CRUD operations or any dummy request you want to make. So copy this URL and go back to our application, and I'm saying make a call to axios.get. That means use the get method and then call the URL, which is the JSON placeholder API that we are using. Now here is a tricky thing. You can then do dot then, okay, and then it will take a function which would return a response. So here we'll get the response. Closing, I closed it here. Okay, and then you can also do dot catch of the promise failure, right? If there is anything failing, you can always you can close it here. So that's your basic structure of any Axios object that you will create for making a request. Now you can just log it here, say response console.log error. Okay, that's it, simple. So if you simply want to use in an HTML file, all you need to do is include the CDN and call this method and implement the Axios as it is in the method. Right? Let's see this in action now. Alright, so I have this button. Let's also open inspect, and now I'll click on this method and it is getting the data, and if you see the data that we have got, it's getting the correct data, which is from the API, that is getting the ID of number 1 with title. To test this, you can also change the values here and make it 10 or any value you want, say 5, whatever you want. Refresh, click. Now your data will have title 5, right? So that's a plain vanilla implementation of Axios in any normal HTML file that you can start using. The next way is I'm going to show you how to use it with Node and Express kind of a setup, because that's where you'll be mostly using, or with the React app. The methods, the implementation is same. How you call it will be little different. Okay, so let's go to that and let's set up expressjs.com, and I'm going to really quickly create a folder inside this and say express underscore tutorial. Alright, and then we are going to go into alright, so I have my terminal open, and what I'm going to do is npx express generator. This will create a quick express application, the dummy one that comes up. So it created, and we can see here inside this we have our express application. So go into express, we are already inside that. Okay, so all we need to do is npm run start, and we didn't do npm install, so let's do that, and now do npm run start, so our server is up and running. Okay, that's the fastest. How do we know? We can go to localhost 3000 and it should say Express, right? So our Express server and an application is up and running on Express. Now let's close this and install Axios. So Axios is installed. Now let's go ahead and implement that in any app.js. If you see this file, the first route goes to index router. Click on that. So we'll implement it here. We'll say const Axios is equal to require Axios. That's it. So if you're writing a React app, you'll probably be writing it as an import statement, right? In Express and Node.js, we write it as require. In React, you'll probably be writing import Axios, right? All right. So that being said, once you are here, let's say you want to make a Axios call, you will again do the same. Here you'll pass the properties and same method that we implemented earlier, right? So how do we do that? Same, just exactly same way. Let's follow the same process. Okay. Okay. Let's meet. Right. Otherwise, copy it from. So I'm just copying it from here just to show you that it remains same. Okay. All right. So there we are. So now we have just copy pasted the same code that we wrote for standalone Axios usage inside the index.js. So now when we call index.js, we should see it in the log. Right. Now let's go ahead and reload this. We should see it logged here. You see, it made a call to this API and it console logged the message. But let's say we want to send data, right? So you can do that as well. Instead of this hard-coded value, we'll say response.data.title, right? Because it's inside the data object and the attribute we are mapping is title. Perfect. So now when I reload, I should see the dynamic title that's coming from the API, right? So that's how you include. This tutorial is mostly about how to get started with Axios. I showed you with standalone in a simple HTML. Just include the CDN, and you can make the calls. Or if you're working on a Node or Express setup, you would install it via npm and require, and then start using that object. Alright, so once you create an instance of Axios, you can start using methods like get, post, put, delete, which we are going to learn in the next episode. So I'll keep it short for now because the reason is I want you to know how to start using. Okay, so some of the things that you should know about Axios is Axios will support these HTTP methods like get, post, put, and delete, right? If you convert them into other way, this becomes part of your CRUD operations, right? Like create, read, update, and delete. So that's the CRUD operations basically maps to HTTP methods which are get, post, put, and delete. We saw the example of get, right? And just this is just a beginning kind of to make you give a heads up and warm you up with the syntax and the code that we'll write. But we saw this example, and in the next episode we will cover about in detail about get, post, put, and delete. We'll also see how to pass query params, etc. I hope you are enjoying this series as much as I am enjoying bringing it to you. If you like this video, please do subscribe to my channel, hit the like button. If you have any queries or doubts, write to me at surya.aradhya@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining. We'll continue this series. I'll see you in the next part. Welcome back to Arc Tutorials, and this is Axios tutorial series, and we'll be covering this complete tutorial series in 3 parts. I covered the first part and today is the second episode. In the first part we learned about the installation, how we can use it as a standalone individual pages, or I also showed you how to use it in Express and Node.js. The way to write code is same even in React. Okay, the only difference that will be is how you import it. Okay, so basically when you're learning this series you can use it in either ways, either in React, in Angular applications, in React, or in Node.js, or in standalone. We also touch based about the basic get method, but today we will be writing all the methods in detail. We will see how what are the different variations and much more. This is live coding, so let's get started. All right, so first we'll learn how to write a async code, right? If you open the code that we wrote last time, we wrote a method and we have declared the name of the function and we wrote some code calling axios.get, right? So today we'll be learning first things first. If you want to use async method, you just have to make the method as async, whichever contains the Axios code. So you can write a async method or you can write a normal regular method. Same thing with your, if you see the express.js code, uh, what you will do is in front of here you will write the async function. Okay, that's how you can make any function as async which contains your Axios code. Okay, that's the simplest thing I can tell you. All right, so now let's talk about today's important things, which is the get, post, and put and delete. Okay, so I'm going to give you a syntax to make it easy, and that remember that, and you will be able to master Axios in no time. Okay, but before that, let's talk about the HTTP methods that are there. Right, so you got get, post, put, delete, right? You have other things like options which tells you what are the different HTTP methods supported, and you also have head, okay, which is basically the header information, but we use these four for HTTP operations. Okay, get means get the data, okay, from server API you can say. Post means create a new resource, right? Create a new resource using API. Put, okay. Now there is put. What does put do? Put will update a resource, update a existing resource, okay? Or if not found, it will create one, okay? So if a resource particular ID is found to update, it will update it. If not, it will go ahead and create one. Delete, as the name says, will be used to delete the resource, okay? There is one more thing called patch. So what does patch do? Unlike put, right? Put will replace. If it found something, it will entirely replace it. Whereas patch will only optionally update the fields. Optionally update the existing resource. Okay. So let's say you don't want to update the entire resource, right? So you can only update one or two fields using patch. Okay, patch will update optional fields using existing resources. All right, so those are all about HTTP methods, and these are all supported by Axios. Okay, now let's talk about the general syntax, right, and how you will write any Axios code. So for any Axios code, the syntax is here you will give the method name. Okay, here Axios dot. So for example, if you want to write a post, you will write Axios dot post. If you want to write a get, you'll write dot get. Okay, that is Axios dot method name. Now remember, if it is a get URL, right? Now let's talk in general. So here I'm going to write, if it is a get call, then URL is mandatory. Okay, that means you're telling which URL to get the data from. And if it's a post, you need to pass URL as well as data. Okay, same thing for put, you'll have to pass URL and data. And Axios dot delete, here you'll pass a URL. Okay, now this is a general syntax that you can use Axios methods, HTTP methods. Now you might want to add some params, right? So you can pass that in optional fields. Okay, you can pass optional fields here. These are optional, where you can send headers, you can send params, query params, etc. Okay, so remember this syntax, okay, because this is what we will be using in today's episode, and we will just write the same thing. Okay, I hope you are now clear with the HTTP methods as well as the Axios syntax. Okay, now that being said, let's go ahead and start writing our code. I'm using the Express server code, but like I said, the code is exactly same no matter which, um, whether you use it in React, whether you use it in Express, whether you use it as a standalone. Okay, remember that, because you might think that, oh, it will be different. The only difference will be in this, how you import it. In React, probably you will be writing import Axios from Axios. Okay, that's the only difference in React and Express. All right, so that being said, you can see here axios.get, and we have a URL and then and catch, right? So we are using this URL to call. Now I'm going to rewrite this into a different method and show you with params. Okay, so now we made it async also. If you see here, I added the keyword async in front of it. Now let's go ahead and I will rewrite this get with a different with params now. This is one way, this is another way. Copy the URL again. Okay, so now notice that here I'm passing the ID as 5. Here I'm not passing. Okay, here instead what I'll do, I'll pass it using params. So here I can write params, and then it will be an object. I'm going to say my param name is ID and I'm passing 5. Okay, and then we'll do dot function response, and then same, we'll write dot catch for any error, function e. Okay, done. Okay, so let's console log this response, and let's console log the error if any. Okay, all right, that's it. And now we can start our Express server. So this is how I'm starting Express server, but you would have something similar in React where we run npm. So I'm loading localhost 3000, which is getting data and printing the value. See here, it made a request because we are not sending anything to the back to URL, or I can say response.send and send the response dot data. Okay, now let's see. All right, now if I refresh, I'm getting the user ID 1, ID is 5. That is important because we passed it as a param now. See, that's the difference. Okay, this is one way, like you can send directly call the URL to get the data. The other way is you can send it through params. Okay, now I'm going to modify this little bit more. Right now if you see, the value is static, right? But in your applications this will always be dynamic. So we are going to read that value from the UI. So I'm going to say id val equal to request dot query dot id. So what I'm going to do, in the query params I'm going to send id, read that value, and I'm going to pass this value as the latest value. Now let's see, it's even more dynamic now. Now here I have to pass query param as id, and I'm going to pass 10. So see, now it is id is equal to 10 some value. I can pass any number of value. It's not there in that system, but right, 6, it's giving dynamic value now. So see, the same get call is now dynamic. Okay, and the difference we learned now is using params. Okay, that's what we learned as part of axios.get. I hope axios.get is clear. All you have to do is axios.get followed by the URL dot then and dot catch. It will catch any errors if there are any. Okay, and we can also pass params. This is another way. Now let's go ahead and learn how to write axios.post. Axios.post, and I told you it will be the same. So see, it will have a method and it will have param. Okay, and let's go ahead and check the JSON placeholder. JSON placeholder. Open this. Okay, and this is the URL. Like, let's check the documentation for post. Okay, so here it is. All HTTP methods are supported, and we are going to use a post. So slash post, when we call, it will create a new resource. Axios. Okay, okay, let's quickly open up the documentation to get the syntax. So post request, just post and followed by the data. Okay, same way, just what we did now. Okay, so I'm going to use this slash post URL, and axios.post followed by the URL followed by the data options. Okay, so that's the thing that we decided here. um, okay, so this data. Okay, now I'm going to go here, copy this URL till the to do's, or I'm going to, instead of to do's, let's call it posts, that we are going to post it here. And in the data, what are we sending? I don't know what it's expecting, but let's see the fields that it has. So title and body. Okay, so we need a title and we need a body. So I'm referring to the documentation for the reason being that it's a public API, so we need to follow certain process in order to match the fields. Okay, but if you have your own API, you will know which fields you're working with. This is test body. Okay, so what I've done, axios.post the URL and then followed by the data. Remember that the data format should be in an object. Okay, otherwise it will give you an error. Alright, so and then again we'll do the same, dot then response and dot catch. Let's copy it here. That's it we need, and that's all we need right now. So let's go ahead and fill this and run again. So I'm going to load it in this, and let's see, it says error. Let's headers already sent. Okay, so whenever you do any such things, you should not be sending any response. So I'll comment off this line and instead log it. Before you print any data, you should not send the headers request, otherwise it would not work. All right. Okay, so now you see it did a get first, and it did not come inside the post, and it did send the response.data. So see here, it created a new resource by the ID 101. Okay, and this is the test body and this is our title. Okay, so basically we posted the data and we got the result. Okay, one other way to check, if you want to really work with this, you can also check with Postman tool and see how it works. Okay, that's for your knowledge, but this is how it works. Let me show you network call just in case if you don't believe the code. Alright, so I'm going to refresh it here. So but you won't be able to see that, the reason being that this is only our response that we are getting. See here, 101, this is test body and our title. Okay, so that is post. Now same way we can do axios.put, and what you will do, same, exactly same, no change, but now the URL will be different. Let's check what's the, for put it is post slash the ID. Okay, so copy this posts. Okay, now you can do, you can send all the details in one go. You can say ID is 1 and then you can say title and body. This is our updated title, updated body. Okay, so I'm going to send the response here with dot then and function response. So if you see, this dot then and dot catch remains same, right? Yeah, that's the beauty of it. In fact, the entire code mostly will look similar to you in Axios, and that's the most easiest way to build this. Console.log error. Okay, all right, we closed it here. Perfect. Okay, so this is good. I'm going to comment this off, else we'll get the error. So now it will make put request to this URL, and what is the ID? It's 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that out. PM run start, and let's, when I refresh this screen now, it should give me the value, if unless, okay, so it has updated. Completed is false, ID is 6 because that was created. Okay, something failed. Let's check what failed. 404 not found. Okay, so I think let's check the URL. So for put, it is post slash ID. Okay, So I'm going to pass the ID here instead of there, and let's see. Again, this is because it's a public API that we are using, so we need to be extremely careful of and we have to basically depend, but it's a free one. So if you see now, it reloaded with ID1. It has got the updated body and updated title. Okay, we can again parameterize this. If you wanted a dynamic one, you can just do ID and pass ID val like this, and now I can even make it work with 6, right? So whatever value you get, it will be completed. Okay, because here we are capturing ID val request query ID and post slash 6 and response dot send. Okay, so we can see here now. Okay, so it came, the updated body is still 1 because we did not reload that. Okay, alright, so now if you see here, ID is 5 and our updated title. Now same way, if I want to pass something else, it will update that particular ID. Okay, we are passing the dynamic ID here, and we are passing the body content for put. Okay, so that is get, post and put. Okay, now the if you see, mostly the Axios syntax, it remains same. Here you'll just tell the URL that you want to delete. Okay, now same thing, let's check the delete option. So delete post slash 1. So post slash 1 would just delete the resource, and we'll send the response back and say that it's deleted. I'm going to say here data successfully. I'm going to comment this line. Okay, so see here, data deleted successfully because it went inside axios.delete. It called the URL, then this and dot catch if any errors. Okay, so basically the syntax, if you see, is same. Axios dot put the method name. Okay, okay, this looks like, I'll just remove this data, it's a little confusing. Okay, so here the syntax is similar. Axios dot method name. Okay, it can be a get, post, put or delete. Okay, and then followed by URL is mandatory, right? URL is mandatory, followed by parameters if any inside this. The only errors you will make, the common mistakes that you will make, is by not sending these in object. Okay, sometimes you'll directly write here 10 or something like that, but for with params, it has to be inside an object. Okay, and that's about it. Anything that you send should be in a object. Okay, all right, that's all Axios has to offer basically with respect to HTTP post example we saw, and put example we saw, right? And we did get and delete. Okay, I'll continue this series, and in the next episode we will learn about interceptors, we will learn about error handling, we will learn how to do concurrent request, multiple methods at the same time, and that will conclude this particular series. I hope you're learning about Axios. This is a complete tutorial series. Don't forget to ask me your doubts in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to help you. Thank you so much for joining. See you in the next episode. To ARC tutorials, this is Axios complete tutorial series. This is the part 3 of the series and the last part. In the first part, we learned about the installation, we learned about the different features, we learned about some of the methods supported by Axios, and we did a basic example with get post. In the second part, we did detailed coding for all the HTTP methods available and their usage and how to make requests and how to process the responses. Today, we will deep dive into different configuration options which are available to us, like headers with credentials, auth, etc. Also, we will learn about interceptors, very important concept of how do you set a particular interceptor, how do you modify request, response, etc. Finally, we'll close this series with error handling and making it elegant. All right. So that being said, let's get started with our coding. Today we have lot to code. All right. So the first example I'm going to show you is with headers, right? And the same thing applies to all the HTTP methods that we'll work with. For this particular series, we are using the JSON placeholder free APIs. These are the RESTful APIs for testing, learning, and all that. We'll be using these APIs. Alright, so that being said, let's get started. I'm going to use this module for today's coding. Let me get rid of this line. Alright, so you can, again, this code remains same. If you are in React, you will probably be doing import Axios from Axios. Okay, if you are in Node.js or Express, you will do require Axios like this. Okay, using require statement. In React, you will write import. If you are doing it in a normal standalone with CDN, you don't have to do anything. Just start using Axios. Alright, so that is the basics that you should know. If you are not clear about that, please refer to the previous parts. Alright, let's continue. The first thing we are learning is to headers with Axios. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to create a new and let's say get. Okay. Again, you can use any method for that matter. Can be get, post, put, whatever you would like to use, and use one of these URLs that we have already used, right? JSON type code. This is the URL for that JSON placeholder that we have seen. So I'm going to use that, and I'm saying get the to-dos, right? Or from that URL. So that's the URL, and then you can pass params, okay, and you can pass the details of the configuration. This is a config. Config means you can pass different items to it, like you can pass headers, okay, and it's an object that you'll have to pass. So here you can say content type, and you can say here application slash JSON or whatever headers you want to pass, right? So that's the syntax. You'll use Axios dot method name followed by the data. If you are using post, let me show you with post because that's a little tricky. So you'll use post, and then you would have the data body like this, and you would pass the object that key fields learning post with headers body with post headers. Okay, so that's the only difference in get and post and put. You would have this extra data that you will have to pass for post and put. For get and delete, you don't have to, you just have to pass the URL. So here I've modified, I've created a simple instance of Axios, and then I'm going to write dot then, and then function, it will give me a response, and dot catch, and here I'll capture the error if any, and I will log the response, and I will log the error. Okay, simplest code possible to inject a header. So see, this is how you add header to any Axios request. Okay, remember the rule: if it's a guest, you won't have the data. Okay, if it's post, you would have that. Okay, so this is the simplest thing that we can do, and once we are done, and then I can finally, right, or you can just say once it is done, you can send a response in Express and say posted data with headers. Okay, the headers can be anything that you want: application slash JSON, text, PDF, whatever you would like. Alright, I'll go to localhost and load that URL. So it says posted data with headers. That's correct, and it has posted and created a new resource by the ID 201. Okay, and that's how you can see uh, the details of what was sent and whether it created a particular request or not. Okay, that's pretty much. If you see here in the headers right now, you have the request header which says content type application slash JSON. Okay, so that's how you can inject any headers that you want in any of the Axios. Okay, so this is an example of headers. Okay, so now next I'm going to show you the details of some other options, like say you want to add with credentials, right? If you are in a network which does not allow you to make a single sign-on or proxy request errors or something, you can add with credentials. You can also add auth, and here you will pass username and say testing, and you can pass password and say testing. Right, so you can pass different configurations here like header with credentials, auth, etc. Okay, not only just headers, but inside this body object, which is a this is Axios config, right, options. So you can pass all these options different. You can do a set timeout, you can set base URL, and lot of other things. Okay, important things are header with credentials and auth. Alright, that's all about the config options for you with the headers. Okay, let's go ahead and I'll comment this so that we can work on others. And next I'm going to show you is concurrent requests. Okay, now what is a concurrent request? Concurrent request means, let's say you have multiple APIs to call and get data from. Okay, you have, let's say, promise 2 and promise 3. Okay, you have 3 APIs that you need to make. Okay, let's copy the URL again. So now see the difference. I want all the 3 to be combined. Okay, that's my requirement. My requirement is I should make 3 API calls, one to to-dos, one to users, get the first to do, get the first, and then get the first. What else is there? Posts. Okay, get one data from all the 3 APIs. Okay, so now since we learned about headers, I'm going to pass it, and I'm going to type accept and coding. Okay, that's one of the things that will accept. You have different options like deflate and compress for that. Okay, now you can copy the same and add it to all the others. Okay, so see, I'm adding now headers to the API calls. Okay, so basically I have 3 API calls, one for users, one for to-dos, one for posts. Now my requirement is I should get the data from all the 3 simultaneously and then combine the data. That's my requirement. What it also means, these are called concurrent requests, right? So for that we'll use something called promise in JavaScript, right? We have promise dot all, right? That's what we are going to use. Promise dot all, if you see the documentation, it says it takes a array. So promise 1, promise 2, and promise 3. I'm telling it that resolve, right? Resolve all the 3, and then if there is any error, catch it. Okay, perfect. Alright, so once you get what you should do, so if you see, I'm going to build an object out of it. I'm going to say combined data is equal to, and I'm going to say posts data, and here I'm going to say results of 0. It's an array, right? So results of 0 is post data. uh, First one is to do's. Okay, so first one is to do's data, second is users data, third is post data, and here it will become 0, 1 and 2. Okay, this is results that we get is an array. Okay, and it will have 3 values. Once all the 3 are resolved, we will get a combined data, and I'm going to do a console log of the combined data. Okay, and remember, the output that we get is dot data is where the data will be. If you don't add data, it would give all the request, response, headers, all those details, which we don't want. We only want the actual data. So I'm doing that, and now I'm putting an error console. Alright, now I've started. Now when I run this application, probably we can do a dot finally, and we can put here and say response dot send concurrent request completed. Okay, so this is a simple thing that we can run. Alright, so we have three APIs. The calls are going to three different APIs. If you see here, to-dos, users, and post. I have created a promise, and we are using promise.all to resolve all the three promises. If they are resolved, put them in console log and combine value. If not, throw an error and finally send a request to the API. I'm going to run this. It says concurrent request completed, and if you see the log, you see the post data, you see the users data, and you see the to-dos data. Okay, so there you go. You have all the details that are coming out. Okay, so that is the concurrent requests of how you can handle with Axios. Okay, the next and important thing is what we are going to learn is let's learn interceptors, and then I'll come to the error part. Okay, so what are interceptors? Interceptors are beautiful mechanism that you can modify, right? You can modify, update your request or response. Okay, there are two types of interceptors: request interceptors, and there is response interceptors. Okay, now request interceptors means if you want to modify or update your request before it is made, before it is called. Okay, you want to add some headers, you want to check some details, you want to inject some secret tokens, etc. You can do that by interceptors. It will do before it is called, before API is called. Okay, before the endpoint is called. Response interceptors means when you receive, right, when you receive the response, you can do the modification, update, processing, transform, anything that we want to do with the response. Those are called interceptors. Okay, now let's see how we can do that. So we need to move this code to the top. Why? That means before we make the call, right? So that's why we should define it at the top, somewhere here. Okay, before you even make the API calls. So interceptor should be the first thing you will define in your code. Alright, so how do you define it? You'll write Axios dot interceptors dot which type, request or response, then use, and then you define. See here it says interceptor route handler, right? So this is where you will write the basic code which would get you the details. Okay, now let's go ahead and implement that. So for that we are going to do simple. I'm going to write a request. When request comes, I'm using ES6 shorthand annotation, but this explains this will open up just like any other uh, oh, sorry, just like any other method that you will have. Okay, same way you will finally have error handler. See, so you can say, okay, so this is request and this is error. Now what I want to do is, let's say I want to add few headers before I make any API call. So I'm going to say request dot headers, right? Now here what I'm doing, request dot headers, and then am saying that I want to add a new header and I want to call it start time, and I'm going to give new date. I'm also going to inject a secret, okay, secret key, and give some, let's say this is my secret key. Okay, once you have done all the modifications, you need to return that request. Okay, in the error, same thing. If you find anything, it's a promise, right? uh, Axios is a promise based thing, so you, if there is an error, you just reject it with a message or something, and you can also give a custom message and say unable to make request. Okay, and return this. That's it. So this is how you use a interceptor. That means you will write Axios dot interceptors dot request if it is a request. If it is a response, I'll show you in just a bit, but first let's test this out. Okay, that's it. PM run start. Okay, now I'll go here. Okay, so it's done. It made our call, but okay, so now let's see the data that we get. Okay, check for headers. We need to check for headers. Okay, so if you see this header now, you see these two entries in the header, start time and secret key. This is the what we have added in our interceptors, right? That means before you make a request, add these two to the header. Okay, so that's how you add interceptors for request. Same thing you can add for interceptors dot response dot use. Okay, now this is where you will define what I should do with the response, right? Again, you want to handle something, you want to add a new ID value, some anything, let's say count or anything, so you can just modify it here. You can say response and then there is an error. Okay, and then you have this, and in the response I'm going to say response dot headers. I'm just going to say um, organization verified equal to true. So again, it can be any, it can basically be anything and everything that you want to add. Just make sure that you return that particular response, and same way you can handle the promise dot reject, and you will throw some unable to process response and return that, right? So this is how all your responses now will have a header called organization verified. Okay, let's see how it works. Okay, now it's completed. If you see the response headers now, and it's not just headers, basically you can do anything and everything here. Okay, so make sure that you don't get confused with that. So this is our request header. If you see the request object, and in the response you can see verified. Let's check the response headers, content start, authorization start key. Okay, let's check. One second, let's check that entire at the start. Headers, you have organization. Let's check if we find that. So you see here, organization verified is true, set to true as part of the response headers, right? So that's how basically you can do with anything. If you want to change data, right, you can do that. You in your response, if you want to add something to the data, you can say response.data, and if you want to edit a particular title of it, you can empty it. You can do a lot of things. Okay, the idea is know about the syntax and how to use it. So this is how you will use axios.interceptor.request.use, and here you will use axios interceptors.response.use. Okay, it's the same code for React, nodejs, express or standalone. Don't get confused with that. Okay, all right, so that was interceptors, and the last thing in the tutorial that I want to cover is the example with errors. Okay, a lot of times you will get errors from API. How do you handle them elegantly is one of the key things. Okay, like you just can't say that something went wrong. You have to be specific about whether it is the client side error, whether it is a server side error, etc. Okay, so what we are going to do is make it elegant, like we can write responses differently. Let's see that now. That is applicable to all the methods. So inside the catch statement, so far we have been just writing like this, console.log e. Okay, but instead you can make it more elegant. Okay, how? I'll show you. And this is the same for all the methods, so don't get confused. Okay, all right, so once we do catch, then the first thing you will do is if e dot response. What this means is that we made a API call. Okay, we got response from server. Now this is important because sometimes if you make a request in the URL or anything, it won't even come inside here because there is no response from server. You made a wrong call. Okay, so that's why. Or we have to check if e dot request. That means while making a request, do we have any error? Okay, so first you handle the response, then you handle the request. For everything else you can put a else. Okay, and here you can say console.log something bad happened. We don't know, it can be anything, it can be for any various reasons. Okay, this could be a setup or anything of those sorts. Okay, but if you want to be again more specific, you can just mention the e dot message. That's the message that we got. Okay, now let's handle the response. Now we know that from server when we get error, it's usually 500 errors. Okay, 5xx. That means usually it will be in 501, 504, etc. Anything which starts with 500 is a server error. So you know that there was a response, and you can check the status of it. Okay, you can log the status and say e dot status. It will give you this number, whatever number, 501, 500, etc. You can also check what message you got from that. So you can say e dot data will give you the exact message that you got from the server. And finally, you can also verify whether if it was something wrong with headers. So you can take these three values and put it, or you can verify and show it more elegantly. If status is 500, you can show a photo, maybe a beautiful image or message. If something message is there, you can change the message, etc. Okay, so those are important from response point of view. Okay, I'll show you a quick example. If you say e dot status is equal to 500, then I'm going to change my message, right? So I'm going to say console.log or send message, whatever, and we will say server is not available right now. This is a message I want to show instead of saying that server unavailable. Okay, so see, this is one of the classic examples that when something goes down in your server, how do you beautifully and elegantly handle it? Same thing. Now let's say you did not make a response. That means it failed even before you make a request. How do you handle that? So that's where you would check that while making an error itself you got something wrong. So I'm going to say e dot request and console dot log. I think it's data again. Let's check. Okay. Alright, so this is how you can elegantly handle with this piece of code. You can apply to any HTTP method: get, post, put, delete, anything that you want. Okay, so this is how you should write a common catch code and call it everywhere. Okay, so you can just make it into a method and call it everywhere else. Okay, so that you have a unique error handling response. You don't have to write it again and again. So copy that code, make it a standard error messaging system that will work, right? I hope it's clear, and before I leave you, I'll demo this one piece, and then I'm going to make a mistake in this particular code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to screw up this URL. So we are making a request even before we get a response. So we are talking about this code block now, line number 67 and 68. Okay, because since we gave a wrong URL, it won't even have any response, right? And that's why we'll see this one. Let's see. Okay, so something bad happened, undefined, right? It came here. Okay, so like that you can check which data you have and how you can manipulate that. Okay, so it is saying 304. Okay, so that is the error we are getting. Okay, now that's exactly what we want. Something bad happened, unable to process response. Okay, so that's how it is giving. Okay, so basically you can customize that error messaging however we want in terms of that the data that you're seeing is because of this. Okay, console log, so don't get confused with that. The data you might be seeing, so you might think it's working, it's not actually. Okay, see here, something bad happened, unable to process, and its status is 304. Okay, it doesn't know what to do. Got it? So that's all about error handling that you should know about Axios. Like I said, write a common method for all these and just call it everywhere wherever you're making a request with any method: get, post, put, or delete. Alright, that completes this part. I hope I have covered all the details that you want. I covered headers, config options, I covered concurrent requests, I've covered errors example, I've covered interceptors, and that's all that you need to know and learn about um, Axios. That I hope at the end of this series you are also confident and you will be able to make use of Axios in your applications. If you have any doubts, please reach out to me at surya.aradhya@gmail.com. I always love to hear from all of you. Also, please, if you have any doubts, you can reach out to me in comment section. I have authored a JavaScript book which will help you, so you can check that out at arctutorials.gumroad.com. Please subscribe, share these videos with your friends and colleagues, and like them if you like my work. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoy and learn Axios. Happy learning. Thank you.